Kang Seo-jin was ruthless, a Korean CEO whose name could silence boardrooms and ruin men with a single signature. He did not beg. He did not chase. He did not lose. Except her, Amara Okoye, the African woman who had walked into one of his hotels 2 years ago, smiled politely, thanked him for holding the door, and walked out with his heart without even knowing it. From that day on, Seo-jin was obsessed. Not in a loud, reckless way, in the quiet way that ruined sleep. He learned her name, her favorite flowers. The way she hummed when she thought no one was listening. The way she laughed with her whole chest. He never touched her. Never crossed a line. He only watched. And wanted. Until the invitation arrived. Amara Okoye and Daniel Mens request the honor of your presence at their wedding. Seo-jin read it once. Then again. Then sat in his office for 3 hours. Unmoving. As something inside him broke. He arrived dressed in black. Cold. Unreadable. Terrifyingly composed, a guest among smiles and music. Amara didn't see him at first. She stood at the altar in white, glowing, beautiful beyond reason. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her bouquet. Seo-jin's chest burned. She's marrying someone else. When her eyes finally found him in the crowd, her breath caught. Their gaze locked. The world narrowed. For one impossible second, she forgot the groom beside her. Seo-jin didn't look away. He didn't blink. And something in Amara's heart whispered, "Why is he here?" As the officiant asked for vows, Seo-jin stood. Gasps rippled through the room. He walked forward slowly, every step heavy with restraint. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice steady but low. "I won't interrupt for long." Amara's hands shook. "Seo-jin, please." He dropped to his knees, a ruthless CEO on marble floors. Begging. The room froze. "I have never begged for anything in my life," he said, eyes burning as he looked up at her. "But I will beg for you." Her groom stepped back, stunned. "I loved you before I knew how dangerous that was," Seo-jin continued. "I loved you quietly, because I thought loving you loudly would ruin you." His voice cracked. "But watching you marry someone else is killing me." Tears filled Amara's eyes. "If there is even the smallest part of you that feels what I feel," he swallowed, "please don't walk away from me." Silence. Then Amara let the bouquet fall. She lifted her dress and stepped down from the altar. "I tried to forget you," she whispered. "I tried to be safe." She knelt in front of him, forehead touching his. "But you are the man I dream about when I'm afraid." Seo-jin's breath shattered. She took his trembling hands. "Take me," she said softly. "If you promise to love me gently." He nodded desperately. "I swear," he said. "I will spend my life proving it." The wedding guests watched in stunned silence as Seo-jin rose, no longer a guest. He wrapped his coat around Amara's shoulders, shielding her from whispers, from judgment, from the world. He kissed her forehead with reverence. Not possession, protection. The officiant, after a long pause, cleared his throat. Do we continue?" Seo-jin looked at Amara. "Do you want to?" She smiled through tears. Yes, they were married that day, not because it was planned, but because it was inevitable. Later, in a quiet room filled with soft light, Seo-jin held her as if she might disappear. "I would have burned the world for you," he whispered. She smiled against his chest. "You didn't have to," she said. "You just had to kneel." And the ruthless CEO, who once ruled through fear, learned that the greatest power of his life was loving one woman and being chosen back. Marriage changed Kang Seo-jin in ways no boardroom ever could. The world still feared him. Executives still trembled when he walked past. His voice was still cold in meetings, his decisions sharp and final. But at home, he removed his watch at the door, left his phone face down, lowered his voice without realizing it. Because Amara lived there, Seo-jin had never waited for anyone. Yet every morning, he waited for Amara to wake before leaving for work, just to press a kiss into her hair and whisper, "I'm yours, always." He learned her silences, her moods, The way she needed space when overwhelmed and arms when afraid. When she spoke, he listened like the world depended on it. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. His obsession didn't disappear. Transformed. He memorized her schedule so he could surprise her with lunch. Tracked flights when she traveled. Staying awake until she landed safely. Kept her favorite snacks stocked in every home they owned. When asked why, he simply said, "She is my peace. I will protect peace." At night, he pulled her close, fingers brushing her back in slow circles. Grounding her, grounding himself. "I ruled empires alone," he once confessed. "But loving you makes me human." In public, he was unyielding. But if Amara touched his arm during meetings, he softened instantly. Eyes warming, jaw unclenching. Employees noticed. Whispers spread. The CEO smiles now. He leaves early. He says, "My wife," like a promise. He didn't deny it. He embraced it. One evening, Amara found him in the kitchen. Sleeves rolled up, attempting to cook her favorite dish. "I ruined meetings today," he said calmly. "But if I ruin dinner, I'll still be forgiven." She laughed. He watched her like she was a miracle. "I kneeled once," he said quietly. "I will kneel for you every day. In patience, in loyalty, in love." She wrapped her arms around him. And Kang Seojin, the man who once ruled through fear, became a husband who ruled his home with devotion. Not because he lost power, but because he finally knew where it belonged. We'll keep it intimate, tender, emotionally rich, and softly sensual. The kind of romance that lives in quiet moments, not explicit detail. The home became Kang Seojin's sanctuary the moment Amara stepped inside it as his wife. The penthouse that once echoed with silence now smelled like her. Warm shea butter, jasmine tea, and comfort. Soft music replaced late-night conference calls. Curtains stayed open so morning light could find them tangled together in bed. Seojin learned that intimacy wasn't urgent. It was a presence. He woke before her every morning. Not for work, but to watch her sleep. The ruthless CEO traced her face with his eyes, memorizing the softness he had fought the world to earn. When she stirred, he kissed her knuckles slowly, reverently, as if reminding himself she was real. "Good morning, my wife," he whispered like a vow renewed daily. She smiled every time that tea night. He undressed her with patience. Hands warm, movements unhurried, always asking with his eyes before his touch. He held her like she was fragile and powerful all at once. "I don't want to rush loving you," he told her once. "I waited too long to do it right." Their intimacy was unspoken and deep. Shared baths where he washed her hair in silence. Bare feet in the kitchen at midnight, cooking and laughing softly. Long embraces on the couch, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Sometimes they said nothing at all, and it was enough. When he touched her, it was not hunger, it was devotion. When she leaned into him, it was not needed, it was trust. Seojin stopped staying late at the office. "Why?" his assistant once asked. He answered simply, "My wife is waiting." At home, he folded laundry badly but earnestly. He learned how she liked her tea. He warmed the bed before she climbed in. He wrapped her in his arms every night, murmuring promises against her skin. In the dark, he confessed things no one else had ever heard. "You healed the parts of me I hid even from myself." She kissed his scars, visible and invisible. In their home, Seojin removed every shield. No power games, no control. Only honesty. If Amara cried, he held her without fixing if she laughed. He watched like it was the greatest victory of his life. And when she slept against him, trusting, peaceful, the ruthless CEO smiled into the darkness. Because the world could have his steel, but his heart belonged entirely to her. Kang Seojin did not understand fear until Amara placed his hand on her stomach one quiet morning and whispered, "There's a heartbeat." He froze. The man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking suddenly couldn't breathe. A heartbeat?" he asked, voice unsteady. She nodded, smiling through tears. And just like that, the ruthless CEO sat on the bedroom floor, forehead pressed to her belly, shaking, overwhelmed by the miracle growing beneath his palm. "I will protect you," he whispered. "All of you." Pregnancy softened their home even more. Seojin attended every appointment, holding Amara's hand like it anchored him to the world. He learned the weeks by heart. He read books at night, glasses slipping down his nose, taking notes like fatherhood was a corporate merger he refused to fail. He talked to the baby every night. In Korean.in soft, careful words. "This is your mother," he would say, resting his head against Amara's stomach. "She is the reason I became a good man." Amara would watch him with quiet tears. When labor came, Seojin unraveled. He paced. He prayed. He begged nurses to be gentle. He whispered encouragement non-stop, kissing Amara's knuckles, her forehead, her tears. "You're doing so well," he kept saying. "I'm here. I won't leave." And when their child finally cried, a small, powerful sound, Seojin collapsed into a chair, covering his mouth as tears streamed down his face. Their baby, perfect, tiny, alive. When the nurse placed the child in his arms, his hands trembled. "I built empires," he whispered, awestruck. "But this is my legacy." At home, Seojin transformed completely. He woke up to every cry. "I learned how to change diapers with surgical precision. Rocked the baby at 3 a.m., humming low, off-key lullabies. Amara would wake to find him sitting in the nursery, baby asleep on his chest, eyes soft and unguarded. "She likes your heartbeat," Amara whispered once. He smiled. "Then she already knows where she belongs." One evening, as they watched their child sleep, Seojin took Amara's hand. "I was a dangerous man," he said quietly. "But you gave me a reason to be gentle." She leaned into him. "You chose to change." He kissed her temple. "For you, for our child, for this family." And in that quiet home, filled with soft breaths, lullabies, and love, the ruthless CEO finally understood what true power was. Not control, but devotion. Their home was not loud. It didn't try to impress. It simply held them. Morning light spilled through wide windows, touching soft curtains and polished floors. The house breathed slowly, like it had learned their rhythm. Wake late, move gently, love deliberately. Seojin made sure of that. He still owned skyscrapers, still commanded empires. But inside their home, Kang Seojin walked barefoot. He learned how to move softly so he wouldn't wake Amara or the baby. Learned which floorboard creaked and which door needed a careful touch. Every evening, without fail, he came home early. Suit off, armor down. Amara would find him in the kitchen, baby tucked against his chest, murmuring low words meant only for family. "This is our world," he once said, looking around. "Everything else is noise." Their romance lived in detail. Shared tea on the balcony at dusk, her head on his shoulder while he read reports he no longer cared about as much. His fingers laced through hers during quiet walks through the house. Sometimes she caught him just watching. "What?" she asked once, smiling. He answered honestly, "I'm still amazed you're here." At night, when the house settled into silence, they talked in whispers. About dreams, fears, their child's future. He listened the way men rarely do, fully, without interruption. And when words failed, he held her. Long, steady, safe. The nursery became his favorite room. He added small touches himself. Hand-picked colors, soft lights, framed letters he wrote to their child for the future. Amara watched him one evening, standing there quietly. "You built this with so much care," she said. He shook his head. "No, I built companies with care. This," he reached for her hand, "this is built with love." Sometimes, after the baby slept and the house went still, Seojin rested his head in Amara's lap. The ruthless CEO, once feared, once untouchable, closed his eyes like a man who had finally come home. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For choosing me," he said, "and for making a place where I don't have to be strong." She kissed his forehead, and their home, warm, quiet, and filled with devotion, stood as proof that love had not only changed a man, it had given him a life, where love stands firm against the world. The world did not forget Kang Seojin, nor did it forgive the man he used to be. One evening, whispers crept toward their home, news articles, old enemies, questions that should have stayed buried. Cameras appeared outside the gate. Headlines sharpened their teeth. Ruthless CEOs past resurfaces. Is his family safe? Amara saw the fear first, in the way guards doubled, in the way strangers stared too long. Seojin saw it in her eyes. That night, he gathered her and their child into his arms, holding them in the quiet living room as rain tapped softly against the windows. "I will not let them touch you," he said, voice low and absolute. "Not with words, not with fear, not with lies." The next morning, the world watched. Kang Seojin stood before cameras, not as a tyrant, not as a legend, but as a husband. Behind him, unseen but felt, was his family. "I have done unforgivable things in my past," he said calmly. "But my wife and child are not part of that past. They are my future." His voice did not waver. "If the world wants me, come for me. But if you come for my family," his eyes hardened, "you will learn what I protect with my life." The statement went viral, not for its threat, but for its love. That night, the gates closed. The house breathed again. Amara found him in the nursery, standing guard in the doorway while their child slept. "You don't have to watch all night," she whispered. He turned to her, eyes soft but unyielding. "I want to." He pulled her into his arms, pressing his forehead to hers. "I once ruled through fear," he said. "Now I stand through love." She rested her head against his chest, hearing the same steady heartbeat that had once been cold, now warm, sure, unbreakable. Years later, people would speak of Kang Seojin as a powerful man. But those who truly knew the story remembered something else. A ruthless CEO who kneeled once, for love, a husband who guarded his home like a sacred place, a father who stood between the world and his child without hesitation. And in that protected home, filled with laughter, quiet nights, and unwavering devotion, love remained undefeated. Time passed gently in the home Kang Seojin built with Amara. Not rushed, not loud, but full. Their child grew surrounded by warmth, learning strength from a father who stood firm and kindness from a mother whose love healed a ruthless man. The world still spoke Seojin's name with awe, but inside his walls, he was simply dad and husband, and that mattered more. Seojin slowly stepped back from the empire that once defined him. He chose mentorship over domination, philanthropy over power, presence over prestige. When asked why, he answered honestly, "I already won the greatest battle of my life." He built schools in Amara's homeland, funded programs for children who needed protection, education, and hope. Every project carried one quiet rule: families come first. Amara stood beside him, not as an accessory, but as a partner. Together, they became known not for wealth, but for integrity. At night, Seojin told their child stories, not of conquest, but of choice. "How did you meet Mama?" their child asked once. He smiled, eyes finding Amara across the room. "I came to a wedding as a stranger," he said, "and left as a man who finally understood love." Amara laughed softly. "And did you win?" Seojin reached for her hand. "No," he said, "I was chosen." Years later, when the world finally wrote his story, it did not begin with his power. It began with the day he knelt, with the woman who changed him, with the home he protected, with the child he raised in love. And long after the headlines faded, one truth remained. Kang Seojin's greatest legacy was not the empire he built, but the family he loved fiercely, gently, and forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also share and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.